Hi, this is military sci-fi and fantasy. If you don't know, if you don't want to be here, leave. Um, anyway, I was recommended by Declan Finn, apparently, since he was unable to show up, and I have no idea why, but that's okay. I'm the owner.
I'll speak to that for just a minute.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Please.
Since Declan came up, Declan had a lot of health problems.
Yes.
Basically, almost died earlier this year. Has been through a lot of stuff, and I'm not sure exactly what it was that prompted him to cancel. But
Legionnaire's disease.
Was it?
Yes.
For real? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
No
Legionnaire's
other stuff.
disease. Yeah.
There's not a funny version of Legionnaire's
No.
disease. Yes, for real.
It's yeah. So it was very serious, and I don't know exactly the details, but I was happy to refund his ticket and stuff. Some of you know that he and I got into kind of a thing on Twitter, but it's not about that. It's just Declan has stuff going on, and I'd love to have him come back if he wants to. He's always welcome at BaseCon. I honestly swear I won't take any more.
Sure, right. Anyway, I'm Jamie Wilson. I'm the owner and publisher of Conservatarian Press. I started the group that became the core of CLFA, helped start Liberty Island Media, and most recently I'm a columnist at PJ Media. I do not have experience with military, science fiction, and fantasy, but in real life I'm a 20-year Navy spouse, and my son...
So you do have experience.
Well, yeah, kind of. My son was a Marine, or is, depending on how you do it. My brother was in the Army. My dad was in the Army, so lots of military stuff going on around me. And let's introduce ourselves. Started all the way over there.
She's really throwing
Yeah,
out
really,
the
you.
bus. I'm Patrick Abbott. I was on the previous panel. So experience working in Iraq and Afghanistan, working tribal affairs, then the hard TDYs of, Germany, England, Norway, Finland. So much food, so much food.
Hi, I'm Alex Macris. I guess I've introduced myself like 4 times now, so I'm still the same person.
I'm Blaine Pardoe. For 36 years I wrote Battletech, and then I didn't.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a nice way of saying I got canceled. My other series include Blue Dawn, Tenure, and my military sci-fi series that I'm working on is Land and Sea.
Hi, I'm Bill Willingham. I told you the anecdote about Mark Finn, who put all the cussing in his stuff and then met his soon-to-be in-laws and all that.
Awesome.
Having maligned him, I owe him an apology because I should have also mentioned that he is one of the editors of a lovely book called Swords and Larceny that just came out. I only have this copy, so you can't buy it, but I'm in it too. So whatever happened back then, he's forgiven me for. But Swords and Larceny, it's caper things in a fantasy setting. I was in the military.
Okay. All right, let's jump right into it. When you're creating a fictional military, what comes first, world, society, or tactics?
You're really
Yeah,
looking
really.
at me. So I'm the type of person who starts big and goes small. So you need a world because the military is a reflection of whatever government system you have, which is a reflection of the culture, which is a reflection of the world and the interactions in the world. So if you're going to be making things, at least on my end, I need that big picture, and that culture and everything influences all the way down into what the military would look like.
So in my case, I would say I started with an idea of the sort of military conflict I wanted, and then built the world that would give me that military conflict, and then built the army for that world.
I generally will start with the big picture of the world that I'm looking at, but then I really dive into the characters and the technology, because when you're dealing with military technology, the characters have to interact with it, so it has to make sense for how characters interact, etc. So to me, a lot of it is the tech kind of feeds how your character is going to interact with the rest of the world, usually in the form of blowing it up.
I too started with the conflict. Mostly I wanted to write the Battle of Rorke's Drift in a fantasy setting. So I started with how can I get there in a fantasy world, built the fantasy world, built the modern rifle company that ends up in a bad place in this fantasy world, and went from there. The tech and the tactics were pretty much dictated, like the tech was limited because they could only bring what they could carry in the world with them and nothing more, and the tactics were imposed upon them from the outside by all the bad guys showing up in numbers too great to really deal with effectively.
Okay. Do you guys base a lot of stuff on real conflicts, real battles, real wars?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Oh, yes.
So for my story, originally, it was because it was a COVID pet project, and I sort of wanted to recapture just the experiences of those embedded in foreign armies and militaries and intel agencies in Afghanistan. And I sent it to DoD, a pre-pub review of the idea, and they were absolutely not. And so it was, after thinking, wow, wait a minute, what if I cross out some things, make it aliens? What if I told the Afghan story of all these people with sci-fi elements? And they looked at me and said, it's fiction? I replied, yes. You're not talking about classified? I replied, no. And they were, fine, go, sure. So a lot of it is a thinly veiled recounting of people's experiences deployed in real life for myself.
Well, for me, I not only look at real life battles, but I also look at the things I enjoyed from my childhood. So when I wrote Ratchet's Run, that's Kelly's Heroes. It's Kelly's Heroes with an alien invasion, but there's a bank job involved, but it's not about the money, and different players, et cetera. And I really wanted to do it. I have a book coming out, hopefully before the end of the year, that's called The Best of the Worst. And, that goes back to The Dirty Dozen. It's those types of things that influenced me as a kid to want to, one, be a historian and also be a writer of military sci-fi. So I'd say real life battles factor in, but I would also say the culture that I've been exposed to has been a big factor in this.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I wanted to do Rourke's Drift and that's available, by the way, in the dealer's room, called Just Another Ranker currently. To get to the dealer's room, just go out that door, go down, leave the money. Anyway, so, yeah, real
Okay.
battles.
That was, by the way, the best plug I've seen.
It was very smooth. So what about your culture's values? How do they shape your military development?
So with the aliens who are visiting Earth, it's very much the military is their culture. They even call themselves the Legion, and
Okay.
everybody has a role in that, and it develops a more collectivist sense. And when they're working with the main character and other humans, there's a little culture conflict of, what do you mean this is your opinion? Or what do you mean you're not working perfectly with the other elements? In their mind, everything has to work together or everything's failing. They don't understand the individual sandboxes, the individual territorial fights, things like that.
In my case, the setting is loosely inspired by the Roman Empire. It's called the Aran Empire, so it's military fantasy. And I wanted to hew very closely to Rome, except for the fact that there's magic and fireballs and things like that. So that required a lot of rethinking of what the implications of that would be, both for how they thought about their relationship to the gods, as well as the battle tactics involved. So the Roman values are there, but the manifestation of how it has to appear in the world changes because of those alterations.
Well, my aliens, we don't fully understand them at all. We can't communicate with them. They aren't trying to communicate. They're just attacking. They've landed in the oceans and have hit all the coasts at once. And there are multiple species that are involved. So we know nothing about them. So the way I approached the culture was to make it a mystery. And bits and pieces of it get revealed a little bit every book or two.
Okay.
To see a little bit more into it. but they're so incredibly alien that we couldn't comprehend them. And that makes them more interesting, I think, for a reader, because, you know, if you get it all laid out for you, you end up in that horrible Independence Day thinking of, okay, well then let's go find the place where we can insert a virus and knock them all out at once. You don't want to go down that path. I want a war that's going to last for a long time. So the longer we have the mystery of the aliens, I think that makes them even creepier than having a weird culture all on their own.
That's cool.
In mine, there's two cultures obviously at work. There's the natives who are not human and want the hated invader humans off of their world, and they're kind of a cross of Highlander warrior culture and some of the American Indian tribes kind of mushed together. I started writing this so long ago that I swear to you that the idea of warrior elves, fanatically warrior elves, was sort of new then. Now, yeah. But that's their culture, very, very martial. And then the invaders, the mercenary rifle company, they are strangers in a strange land, so their entire culture is support of each other, me and my friends against literally the world.
Okay. All right, now hopefully this is going to be confrontational. How
Oh,
about,
good.
I'm into that.
how about veterans versus non-veterans? Do you really need military experience to write this stuff well? Or can you get away without it?
So having experience does help. And one thing I want to show is the degradation of what I would consider the most popular military sci-fi series of all time, Star Trek. The original series was written by Gene Roddenberry and others who had military experience. And that shows just in the interaction of the officers, the decorum, that even when stressful things happen, they have this mental rotation in their head of what to do. Nowadays, with the current writers of what goes for Star Trek, they don't have that experience, and it shows. And it's Gen Z, millennial, chat, snip, snap, Marvelism. That being said,
Not only don't have it, but I think they're
actively hate it.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
and-
Well, but to be honest, though, there's a lot of flaws with the modern Star Trek that don't have anything to do with the military.
Well, there is no modern Star Trek, what I'm saying, but just as an example. That being said, I want to stress, it isn't closed to those who don't have experience. None of us were fantasy thieves, at least I hope not. I never ran a detective agency in Savannah with a vampire, a ghost, and a zombie. So you can bring in not different perspectives to the story. Might not have the different feel, but it can still be valid.
So I have a love-hate relationship with this question. My military experience is 2.5 years at the U.S. Military Academy, where I proved to be a really good academic and a pretty terrible soldier. So I'm well equipped to write a story about being really miserable at West Point. Beyond that, I feel like the closer you're hewing to the real world U.S. military or whatever military you served in, the more valuable your experience is going to be. I think when you start to get into fantasy in particular, the experience can almost be misleading because it's too easy to assume that the past was just like the present, and you actually have to learn to divorce yourself from your expectations of what things were like and put yourself into the shoes of what it was like for that person. So that said, I do think that the sheer physical misery of being in the military is really valuable for writers, because I personally would not have understood just how absolutely awful it is to be in infantry without doing like infantry week at West Point. It was really valuable. Now I really empathize with those guys more than I would have, whether they're Roman legionaries or Space Marines or whatever the case may be.
I'm going to kind of go the other direction, so you got your controversy
There we
here.
go.
Awesome.
I have never served in the military, but I have written military history books. I've researched them. I've taught twice at the U.S. Naval Academy. I've done lectures at the U.S. Naval Museum, the Smithsonian, as well as the National Archives, all on military history subjects. So I think you don't have to be a veteran to write this genre, but you have to do your research. And that research has to be fairly in-depth. You also have to know people who were in the military. Because a lot of times I will call up friends of mine who served and said, you know, does this situation, how would you approach it in battle? And they've given me good advice through that. So I don't think you have to be in the military, but you have to be a lover of the military and understand enough of it to be able to articulate it well with other people.
I want to say emphatically that you're not allowed to write military science fiction or fantasy without military experience, but only because I'm a contrarian. No better way to ensure that I'm going to go do something than forbid it. Research is a valuable tool. I'm a little torn between two things because there are intricacies of military culture that are not the big things about how battles are fought and won, et cetera, and the tech and the equipment, but the small inner things about culture that I fear you won't be able to find in any kind of research. I mean, I was in the military when the first Superman movie came out. As a matter of fact, I was the projectionist at the Post Theater.
Oh, wow.
And our base, amongst other responsibilities, almost everyone there was involved in some way with nuclear convoys, the transporting of and whatever. And of course, when the scene came up of the nuclear convoys that were so easily flummoxed by the ambulance blocking the road and all that kind of stuff, the theater erupted in hoots and catcalls and derision and imagine 500 people simultaneously talking back to the film, explaining to the film as it was running what they're getting wrong and how this could never happen. Those kinds of things, I think you have to be lucky enough to have experienced them because they don't show up in standard research that you can. However, the fix is do your research, write the story you want, and then if you feel that it lacks something, find an expert to run it by. Find a beta reader.
Can I add something? Yeah. One thing I recently experienced, I was writing a superhero story and I had a Russian superhero team. I really thought I did my research into how it would work. And I got feedback from my first Russian reader, and he pilloried me for all these things I got wrong. That would have been completely impossible for me as an American who doesn't speak Russian to ever know, like slang terms and things like that.
Yeah.
And so that probably is a lesson there that just in general, it's not like the military per se, but maybe it's like the military culture.
Yes.
Right? Military culture is where you need to really get that insight. Yeah. But I think you can get it from other people, just otherwise we couldn't ever write anything except what we personally experienced.
I would say 90% of what I ask people is, I got a guy who's a dipshit in this scene. How would they tell him he's a dipshit?
Right.
And they're like, and they'll rattle off 42 things, and I'll jot them all down, because swearing in the military is such a great thing, and it's an art form in the military. So, talking about other people is brilliant, and so I kind of agree with you. You do have to, and what Bill said, you do need that beta reader or that person that could give you that kind of insight, because it's fun.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that about beta readers. If you hadn't, I was going to.
I wasn't sure I was using the term correctly.
Oh, you
Just,
were.
You know, just a reader, someone who can tell you where you screwed up.
Right.
Yeah, it's not a Tim Waltz reading your book, not a
God.
beta reader. It's,
He's
Wrong
a bit
beta.
of a knucklehead, I hear.
Wrong data.
Wow.
okay, I won on that one.
All of our readers are alpha readers.
Yeah, all of ours are out.
There you go. Okay, let's do this one fairly quickly because you could go on and on and on. But mistakes and fixes. What's the single most common mistake you see other authors make about militaries and the military life?
Can I go first this time?
Uh-oh.
All right. Has anyone seen Space Above and Beyond?
Yeah.
Very pretty TV series that absolutely had, they can't have had a single person familiar with the military in the making of that, because they train these guys as the space fighter equivalent of fighter pilots. So the ultimate training. And then they send them on ground missions where they pound some dirt to go find, you know, so-and-so lost satellite. And every single one of their missions, if you remember the series at all, they have a discussion about what they should do, because no one is ever put in charge. There was no chain of, there was like a big space admiral that would sometimes give them orders, and that's it. They'd get out on their mission, and they'd have gripe sessions about, should we do this, and should we do that, and all this kind of stuff. And it was just excruciating. So that kind of, yes, there's a lot of second guessing and griping on any group of people that do something in the military. There'll be one guy in charge, and you know, the three other guys will be telling him in every way they can get away with how he's doing it wrong. But at some point it's shut down. There's definitely, so just that one fix. If you're going to do military stuff, learn a chain of command and learn about, you know, there's the person who's running it and then the others. So
It makes me wonder if all the story writers were women. I can get away with saying that.
you can.
guy that ran the X-Files.
Oh, Lord.
I'll
Okay.
throw a grenade and see if it explodes or not. But with the chain of command thing, I can take what I'll call silliness in military sci-fi. I can turn off my brain and be, well, in this culture, they're all weird. It's when you get that sort of thing in real military books, and those who know will know about the lone survivor controversy of whether or not they really discuss things. Was there no chain of command? Or American Sniper, one of the greatest works of fiction ever. Yeah, those things annoy me.
The thing that always got on my nerves was the competent lieutenant. When I'm reading a book and you get a competent lieutenant who can read a map and he always knows where to put his troops, there's no need for the NCOs because this guy's so brilliant. When I read that stuff, my eyes roll because it doesn't fit anything that I've had experience with.
I'd like to rebut that a bit. Just
Were you a lieutenant?
no, God, no. They call them 90-day wonders for a reason, and it's not a compliment. Yes, most lieutenants now, but in the greatest series ever put to film, bar none, and you know why were TVs even invented before it? Band of Brothers. Those guys trained with their men for more than a year before they went into action, and I can believe the competent lieutenant in that situation.
In that situation,
But-
yes, but the NCOs are what saved that. those
But the
units.
NCOs are the background. I love. It's a slightly broken movie, but the scene in Platoon where Sergeant Barnes is giving commands and designating things, and the lieutenant has to kind of wimpily ask him afterwards, can you leave me to, can you make sure I give the commands and not do it? And Sergeant Barnes just says, yes, sir, and blows his cigarette out in the lieutenant's face. That is like the lieutenant. And that, I think, is about the time in the military where they were just churning them out, putting them through their 90 days, and then throwing them into the midst as if they knew something.
I guess my biggest pet peeve is when the author doesn't take into account the magic or technology of the setting, and then sort of blindly has the troops fight from whatever aesthetic era he favors, without really thinking through what the changes would necessitate. So, for instance, if you have a setting with, massive numbers of aerial cavalry where they fly around in Pegasuses, but they still use sort of ordinary medieval castles with, walls and big courtyards, and you're like, okay, have you really thought this through? Or they form up in phalanxes, but the enemy is able to cast a fireball with a 30-foot radius, and you're like, that was probably a bad idea to form up into a phalanx. So that I can't. I put the book down at that point.
I'll modify my answer and base it off what's been said earlier. Those who don't serve in the military or have any experience don't really understand NCOs or warrant officers especially. So you don't see those as much in a lot of science fiction. You have the grunts and then the officers without any comprehension of just, especially how the United States has empowered NCOs to a point that in Iraq they had the same power as an Iraqi general basically in the First Gulf War.
Yeah. In my unit, we had some pretty good NCOs, and the lieutenant in charge of our platoon was referred to lovingly as Lieutenant Biscuit, because the NCOs ran everything, and Lieutenant Hilling would always seem to show up and do the how you guys doing, how's my troops, etc., just after food was delivered, so that he could ask in every case, you gonna finish that? You gonna have that biscuit? He was skinny as a rail and a great guy. He was nice, but man, that guy could eat. And yeah, Lieutenant Biscuit. Better than the other platoons, Lieutenant Winters. When we did our 12 Days of Christmas, it always ended up with Lieutenant Winters in a body bag. But he would hide in bushes so he could step out just in time for people passing to have to salute him. But anyway, yeah, lieutenants, they were a thing. And sergeants did run the Army and do.
Oh, I totally agree. I've had a lot of compliments. I had a warrant officer referenced in one of my books, and I got an email from one. And he was like, thank God somebody put us in here. And thank you for mentioning the E4 Mafia. He was like, that's really how the military operates. And, my Marines steal stuff, and, which is perfectly appropriated. You have to know this stuff, but you have to know veterans, you have to do this. For part of the stuff I did, for example, for Land and Sea, I got a press pass and went to Ranger Week, Best Ranger competition. Oh. And I actually was there for a whole week as one of the 5 members of the media who covered it. Nice. And I got to crawl in tanks, which is a whole Winnie the Pooh and the Honey Tree thing getting me out of the tank, which was hilarious. And thank God they didn't film that. But, I went up with the Rangers. I ran with them when they went from one obstacle course to the next. I took pictures. They sat down and explained everything to me that they were working on. You have to do, if you're not in the military, you really have to do some hands-on research with these guys. And you can get a press pass. It's so simple to go to these types of things. If you're thinking about doing it, you got to fill out a piece of paper. And you can get approved, and you get to go up when they're shooting machine guns. You get to stand next to them while they're doing it.
My impression of the military vis-a-vis opening themselves up to people that want to learn, because I'm a writer. I know a guy a painter who wanted to draw the inside of a cockpit of a fighter jet strafing a dragon. And they let him inside whatever the jet was. And they simply just pointed out, okay, you can paint this, but you can't, that's classified. But they trusted him to do it. And in his painting, if you look really close, you could say, not an instrument or something like that here and there. So they were really open about it. On the week before 9/11, I got permission. I wanted to do a story that involved the C-130, the spooky, yeah. And they were gonna, this was up in Vermont. I was gonna go to the Air Force base near there. They're gonna let me go up in one while they test fired some stuff. And I go, well, this is, I wanted to kind of say, are you insane? I'm an idiot and a lazy, like, why would you let me do all that? Then, of course, before it actually happened, there was 9/11, and suddenly it's like all of those invitations were canceled. But the personality, the culture is very much, and I think if they sense that you're going to be pro-military, they want to help you get there and learn. So you can get this stuff in great hunks, without actually joining up. But that said, next year we will have a recruiter here from,
Sure, why not? Pardon me.
Honestly, just contact me, look up Public Affairs Office.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're happy to help, it's their job.
You're a journalist, though, the PAO will tell you anything that you would like to hear in the nicest way, but not necessarily, not your friends either.
No.
I don't know. They let me run out and climb in a helicopter with the guys that were going up. That was pretty cool.
yeah, it is.
Why doesn't the military just promote the senior sergeant whenever it has an opening for a lieutenant?
Oh, they'd be, why are you demoting me?
Yep. Yep.
They really do serve such different functions that it does happen, but it's rare, and it should be, because the jobs of sergeants and the jobs of officers are really two different tracks that hopefully combine together for an effective leadership. But yeah, they're not really the same animals.
Here's a rule of thumb, and it's not perfect, but for
That's
people.
two thumbs.
Rules of thumbs. The officer down to the lieutenant helps set the vision, helps put the
Yep.
ship in the right direction. The sergeant is the one who gets the day-to-day things done. That, okay, this is what we're doing, this is how we're going to do it, and make sure people do it.
Yep. That's it.
It's a different skill set. People say, well, one's leadership and one's management, and that's a fuzzy definition,
Yeah.
but
Both leadership.
a lieutenant isn't going to go down into the details of making sure who's exactly doing what. Yeah.
You're another way, mom versus dad. The lieutenant is the well-meaning young father. He fumbles around a lot, and the sergeant, the platoon sergeant, is the mother who says, your father's every word is law, and all the kids know who wears the pants in the family.
I have a little story about what happens when that gets screwed up. No, this is a serious story. This is really bad. My brother was a sergeant in, he was National Guard Army, but they were one of the first folks deployed over to Afghanistan. And so he was pretty much in charge of his platoon. One day, and he, by the way, he never lost a man. He was really, really good. Came back with a Bronze Star with Valor. one day his lieutenant decided that he wanted to take the platoon out on patrol. And Rob argued with him, but the lieutenant would have none of it. And he took him out, and instead of what Rob did, which was take all the Humvees off-road, because they're off-road vehicles, and on the roads is where you find the bombs, he decided he was going to take it on the road, ran right over an IED, and killed a guy. So, yeah, you have to stay in your lane.
Or in this case, get off your lane.
Or get off the lane. That was the problem. Yeah, so that was the only band they lost. So anyway, next question. How about the canon beyond your work? What works outside of what you've written yourself do you find most useful or the very best?
Band of Brothers.
Of course.
There's no other reason for the TV to exist. Any show, they do have other shows. If they have one of the cast of Band of Brothers in it, that's a good show. No.
How do you really feel? I sense you holding back.
No, there's, boy, what? So you're basically asking who's done it right.
Yeah.
The Legionnaire series by Wargate. Because it's written by two guys who are former Rangers.
Oh.
And it's basically Star Wars, but written from the Stormtroopers' perspective. And there's a huge story. There's multiple story arcs in the whole series. You don't have to worry about that. The books stand alone. They're very solid. Those guys have been coaching me every step of the way. The Legionnaires, and I think Tin Man's back there, and another good one's Forgotten Realm, where they've dropped in on a platoon of Rangers, I think it's a platoon of Rangers in a fantasy world setting, and they rack up a huge body count. But those types of series do it really well, and those guys are veterans, so those are guys I go to because they're my publisher. I talk to them when I get stuck on stuff to go, am I getting it right? Am I on the right track?
The Falkenberg's Legion stories, the Mercenary West of Honor, and other stories set in Jerry Pornell's Mercenary universe, Codominion universe. A lot of that has aged out in the sense of technology and politics going in different directions than he could have anticipated. But the military culture of mercenary units in a science fiction setting it cannot be outdone. It's just wonderful. Right up until he lets Larry Niven join in and turns too many things cute. But anyway.
I like Tom Krotman's career.
Oh, well,
series.
yeah. Of course.
Tom is a friend, and he is my go-to for when I have questions about, what an absolute, bloody-minded, ruthless person would think about military matters. And and then I also really like John Steakley's Armor. I think was a really good one for the mentality of the protagonist, and of course David Drake's Hammer Slammers.
Yeah.
Really like.
Yeah.
So there's one thing I like about military science fiction. It's actually a huge field with subgenres in it. Besides our giant mech friend here, who actually writes some very good, what I thought, hard military sci-fi, not only in the science but actually the military area. I'm friends with Christopher Denote, Rick Partel. You got the big ones, the original Star Treks, especially Deep Space Nine, a military out on the frontier where things can't be perfect. You even have, if you just need that murder hobo in you satisfied, Warhammer 40K and goes smash orcs. So it's a wide field and there's so much to choose from.
There it is.
Okay, cool.
Deep Space Nine is Casablanca in space.
Oh, yeah.
And when
right.
you start substituting characters, and it's almost, at least at the beginning, easy to do single substitution. This guy is this guy, this guy. I mean, Rick is the Ferengi bar owner. And when you take that far enough, you realize that the Starfleet are the Nazis. They are.
No Maquis propaganda here, sir.
They're the occupational force. They're good Nazis, but
Well,
no, I love
Only
Deep
at
Space Nine.
FaceCon.
but, yeah.
Deep Space Nine had some dark episodes.
They did. They went dark and best Star Trek other than the original series.
Absolutely.
There is. Not the best captain other than Kirk.
No.
The best captain other than Kirk in the ongoing is Captain Jellicoe from 2 episodes of. He performed at my friend's house, Ronnie Cox, because he's also a folk musician, and that poor guy got pinned. He showed up for dinner, and I was invited to dinner early to talk to him. I pinned him for 2 hours to talk about Captain Jellicoe, and he was very polite, but he was a little afraid of me by the time.
For those who don't know, Jellicoe's greatest contribution to Star Trek was getting Counselor Troy to actually wear a uniform.
Wow.
Is that a
Okay.
contribution or?
It
Yeah.
was.
Wow. Okay, one last question, and then we're gonna open it up for questions from you guys. Advice to aspiring writers. What's the one piece of advice, just one, guys, that you would give an aspiring writer in this field?
So last time I gave networking, this time I'll say, just try. You don't have to be perfect your first time. If you want, just write the very short stories. That could be a Twitter post. Write a short Substack story, a one-pager. Just keep trying, keep growing. Don't be afraid to fail. That's how you learn.
Become an expert in some particular area of military history that you know really, really well, that is a little bit off the beaten path, and you can offer something that's fresh for people that haven't encountered it before.
Don't get too caught up in the tech or the methodology, et cetera, to the point where it ruins a story.
I would echo the just do it. I mean, learn what you can, do the story you want to do, and then find an expert or someone with more expertise than you to run it through. Now, I suggest you give that manuscript to Blaine because he's written 4 tenure books since last year when he announced this project.
Oh my God.
He's making the rest of us look so bad that write at normal speed. So let's slow him down a bit.
No.
So give him your manuscripts and maybe he'll.
I wrote
he'll-
2 stories during this panel.
Wow.
Oddly enough, I believe you.
Well, now I know my question, where's book 4?
Book 4 is actually being worked on right now.
See?
Yeah,
That's why you only ever see one hand up here, he's typing down the other.
yeah.
Hold on here. Oh my gosh. Pardon me, I have bad lips.
Okay, here, this is a little bit of a tag on to the last question. Exactly how much tech would you put in a scene you were writing about the specific historical battle? Is it for Head Start? Yeah. Is it on there? No, wrong one.
Did you do your personal EMD?
Uh-oh.
So I'll just try to say it again. It's tag on to the last. Is this working anymore? Just stop. Okay. The last question. How much tech would you put into a scene you were writing about a specific historical battle before heads start exploding that you got it wrong? So is there too much you can put in where people would start picking at it and taking it out of the story? Is it just the right amount?
I think, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Absolutely, there's too much. The Turkey City Writers Group, which is Austin, a lot of published authors had this Turkey City lexicon that they put out under no copyright of things to avoid. And they have, one of their rules is, I suffered for my art, now it's your turn, which is that tendency to, you research all of this and you really do want to put it all in there. And you should probably, a little might go a long way, unless you're Frederick Forsyth, who every book he writes is 90% setting up the thing, and then the 10% at the end. It's like when you read Dogs of War, you learn how to form a mercenary company. When you read Dave the Jackal, you learn how to become a professional assassin. It's just rife with details. But somehow he can get away with that stuff without, I mean, that's the intriguing, exciting part. That's a code I haven't cracked. I would tend to pull back, you know, put as little as you can in maybe and give it to a reader and see if she understands, okay, what do you know about this now that I've, that's a guess. So it's, you know, but also just write, if you absolutely need to get that in there, then do that.
Yeah, I would say Mike Bennett, has anybody read Mike Bennett's series? Yeah, it's a great series. It's about a kind of a ghost organization that is empowered to do the things the United States government doesn't. Mike is a true expert, but when he talks about like hacking a phone, he has diagrams from field manuals and stuff. I mean, and I like it because I learn the nuts and bolts detail. His readers love it because they know it's 100% accurate. For a casual reader, I don't know if they kind of latch through that stuff, because you get into, well, you're going to turn to this megahertz and then do this and then, you know, wangle the Furtweiler rod. And, you know, it's like you can get so caught up in that stuff that it doesn't flow the story. And your job, we're all entertainers up here. Our job is to entertain. And so you make it as technical as you need to make it, but not anymore.
So I would say it depends on the audience you want to reach. I write some very niche games, and so to some gamers, the level of crunch and detail that I provide is way outside of what they would tolerate. But then my entire community is that specific group that wants that level of detail and doesn't tolerate it not being there. And so I think if you're aiming to be the #1 New York Times bestseller, you have to write in a particular way that's going to appeal to men and to women and to all age groups and to casuals. But if you think to yourself, I want to be the Frederick Forsyth of 16th century Genevan military fantasy, like, go for it. Be that guy. You'll have your niche. You'll sell that, you know, that mid-list book, and that can be a good way to be. I just think you have to know who you're writing for, and cater to them.
I'm not a technical guy. In fact, in one of my scenes, one of the characters asks how the alien space shuttle works. And the character replies, do you know how your cell phone works?
Yeah.
Good answer.
Thank you. Anyone else?
There's some guys over there.
Maybe pass this down, Thank you. I think that will work better. I hope. No, of course not. These things are terrible.
Well, you guys put weapons in your scenes and everything, and I know sometimes ranges and things will change depending on how you want a scene to go. How much fluff is in there to get the scene on to the next one, and how much is you guys doing the hand waving?
I never cheat, so you guys have to do this.
Well, as I said in a prior panel, most of my fiction writing, I actually run the battles out using my game systems. And so I don't cheat at all. Like, it's actually, I play it out, and everything in the ranges are as accurate as I can make them, and all the tactics are as close to sort of I can simulate as possible. So that way it just feels really as real as I can make it. I mean, you know, given that it's men in tights or whatnot.
Yeah, I will fudge occasionally, but it's pretty rare now. And especially now that I've spent some time with a machine gun, you really get a sense for, oh my God, I can kill people way, way far away. A whole bunch of them. You know, and so it does change your thinking a little bit. It's one thing to say, oh, this is how many meters it goes. It's very different when you see how many meters that is in real life.
But you also have to pay attention to the psychology, because even though like the M60 and the assault rifles are good out to a certain range, they usually found out that most soldiers will not shoot until they're within their comfortable
Yeah, there's an optimal range.
Yeah, and so much of their their kind of retraining in Vietnam, for example, was to get them to start shooting earlier, because that's our advantage. Our equipment's better because we can do that.
Okay, from an earlier question, go outside, like sight lines, right? Until you've actually been in certain types of terrain and actually stood in particular locations and seen the sight lines and actually be able to visualize. Like Google, like I try and use Google Maps and I think I know what I'm doing, but then you actually go to the location and it makes such a difference. Like to say, oh, this has a 1,000-meter range, but you can't see more than 20 meters or whatnot.
Oh, yeah.
Hugely important.
Right, in the movie Green Beret, which I saw as a kid, I did not understand when the new commander came to the fire base, where the first thing he says is, let's roll that forest back another 1,000 yards all around. It's like, really? Why is that? That seems busy work. And, later on you understand why that's very important.
Yeah.
Well, now that we've got our game system for land and sea in place, I strongly agree with you. I game it out. And you learn that hand grenades are wonderful at their maximum range, and they're horrible at point blank range. Just horrible.
Okay. I think this is gonna have to be the last question.
Okay.
People wanna eat.
So if I want to ask this to you as readers. So if you're reading in the genre and it's not the Terran Confederation or something, there's no connection to Earth, then can an author get away with coming up with an entirely new rank structure and unit and formation hierarchy? Or if they actually use the American land forces, squad, platoon, company, battalion, are you going to roll your eyes if they do that?
It's your story, do what you want, and especially if you describe as you mentioned, it's not Earth. The culture develops the warrior system. The ancient Greeks were not the French, were not the Americans, were not the Brits originally. We learn from each other, but especially if you have an alien culture that developed completely separately, or human culture thousands of years cut off, it is going to be very different. And just make it work in your own system.
So you would not lose patience with it if they took the time to show you by context how that works?
Yeah, only if you created a new alien structure and system and then didn't have them actually acting correctly within that, I would think. If you're not following your own rules, you'll eventually lose your readers, I think. But no, as long as you create your rules and stick to them, and then maybe even point out the deficiencies of their way of battle versus yours, then you're golden.
Yeah, and if you really get stuck, you can always do a little cheat thing in the front that says, here's American Army ranks, and here's what the alien equivalent is.
Oh, yeah,
You
that makes
do it for the reader in the acknowledgments. So just in case you're worried it bogs them down because they call it the Garflagabla instead of the captain, well, then, give the reader a crutch, up in the acknowledgments so they can kind of follow along. They'll get it by the third or fourth chapter.
Plus, most readers of military science fiction and fantasy love that kind of additional information.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes the culture clash, if you have two different systems fighting against each other. In history, that's always been fascinating.
Yeah.
Think about Boudica's army, could control all of England, meets the Legion, and the Legion just mows them down. And it's, oh my gosh, our systems are flawed, or there's a new exploit. That
Mows them down when they try and meet the Legion on their own terms.
Mm-hmm.
She did sack London before that, and rather savagely. But it's just
Rorke's Drift is the best example.
Rorke's Drift is the best example, and if you want a fantasy version of Rorke's Drift, if you
By the way,
skip lunch
that was a buck, dude.
and head out there, it's just another rancor,
Yep.
and it's about a rifle company amidst warrior elves who are savage brutes, but have a fully detailed, realized culture. Thank you.
Yeah, this is as far as we can go. Thank you, everybody.